I want to start today by asking you, yeah, you listening, a question. And I want you to pause whatever you are doing for just a second and genuinely think about this. Are you actually happy right now?
Oof, that is a heavy question to just drop on someone right at the start.
Right. But I don't mean the polite, automatic, I'm good, thanks, answer you give a coworker on a Monday morning. I mean the real one. Deep down, when you are entirely alone and the room is quiet. Are you happy?
Asking someone to confront their own baseline of contentment without any distractions, it cuts right through all the daily noise.
It really does.
Because we all operate under the assumption that we know what happiness is and how to get it. But when you actually look at the data, it's arguably the most misunderstood concept in the human experience.
Which is exactly why we are taking a deep dive into that very concept today. Our sources for this are just this massive synthesis of decades of positive psychology, cultural studies, and ancient philosophy.
Yeah, and the mission here is to completely dismantle society's traditional checklist for happiness.
Yes. We want to bypass all that toxic positivity floating around the internet right now and really extract the surprisingly quiet, science-backed truths about what actually moves the needle on human well-being. So, okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the biggest lie we are fed from childhood, the idea that happiness is a destination.
Oh, absolutely. You really have to deconstruct that false map before you can draw a reliable one. Think about the narrative you're sold. You get good grades, you get into a good school, you land a prestigious job.
You buy the house, you get married.
Exactly. The implication is that at the end of that checklist, lasting joy is just sitting there waiting for you to cross the finish line. Psychologists actually have a specific term for this. It's called the arrival fallacy.
The arrival fallacy. It's that deeply ingrained belief that once you achieve the big goal, you're going to feel permanently fulfilled. But the sources highlight a really fascinating phenomenon with Olympic athletes.
Oh, this is such a good example.
Right. Because these are people who win gold medals. They reach the absolute pinnacle of their entire universe. Yet they often report feeling strangely empty, sometimes even depressed, just a few weeks after their victory.
Yeah.
So if achieving a literal lifelong dream doesn't fix you, what is actually going on in the brain there?
Well, it comes down to evolutionary biology. We are wired for survival and continuous striving, not for permanent satisfaction.
Wait, really? We're not supposed to be satisfied?
No. If our ancient ancestors brought down a mammoth and then just sat around feeling permanently fulfilled by that achievement, they would have literally starved to death the following month.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So the human brain is specifically designed to give you a massive dopamine spike to reward a successful behavior, but then it rapidly resets to a baseline. That emptiness the Olympian feels is just their neurochemistry aggressively returning to normal, so they have the drive to go hunt the next mammoth.
Which brings us directly to modern consumerism and the whole hedonic treadmill concept.
Yeah.
You buy a new thing, you get a real, genuine spike in pleasure, but you adapt to it incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast.
It reminds me of downloading a massive software update on your phone. For the first 24 hours, the interface looks shiny and new, the animations are so smooth, and you're just thrilled with it. But by Tuesday...
It's just your phone again.
Exactly. It's just your phone. You don't even notice the new features, and you're already unconsciously waiting for the next update. Are we just doomed to keep running on this treadmill forever?
Well, if you are chasing external achievements and consumer goods, you are absolutely stuck on it. Your overall baseline of happiness will remain static no matter how much you buy or achieve.
That's a little depressing.
It sounds like it, but the science actually shows we can raise that baseline. We just have to look at completely different, much quieter ingredients.
Okay, so the sources bring up the 10% rule here, which completely blew my mind. Research shows that our external life circumstances, like your job title, the size of your house, your exact income bracket, only account for roughly 10% of the variance in your long-term happiness.
Just 10%.
Only 10. The other 90% is determined by your internal mindset, your daily habits, and how your brain is actively trained to interpret the events of your life.
And what's fascinating here is how the scientifically proven ingredients for a good life are completely absent from the flashy things advertising sells us. Take the Harvard study of adult development, for example.
Oh, right.
It is one of the most comprehensive longitudinal studies on human well-being ever conducted. Yeah. They tracked participants for over 80 years.
80 years, they tracked everything. And the absolute strongest predictor of long-term happiness and even physical health actually wasn't wealth. It wasn't fame or career success. It was the quality of their close relationships.
Yeah, and the mechanism behind that is incredible. Chronic stress releases a hormone called cortisol, which essentially acts like a slow drip acid bath on your brain and cardiovascular system over time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not good. But having warm, highly supportive relationships literally acts as a biological buffer. When you have someone you deeply trust to talk to, your nervous system downregulates. Your body clears that cortisol faster, which literally protects your brain from cognitive decline.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And alongside relationships, the sources highlight autonomy and purpose. Autonomy is, it's simply having real, tangible control over your own choices and your own time.
Right.
When you think about it, this is the exact psychological reason why micromanagement destroys workplace morale. Your salary could be fantastic, but if your boss dictates every tiny detail of your day, your brain registers a loss of autonomy as a profound threat. And your baseline happiness just plummets.
Exactly. And purpose works right in tandem with that. It's the feeling that your daily actions actually matter to someone other than yourself. People who consistently volunteer, for example, report much higher happiness levels than people who don't, despite the total lack of financial reward.
Because they feel needed.
Exactly. They're engaging in behaviors that signal to their own brain that they have value in the tribe. Pair that sense of purpose with gratitude. The daily habit of actively noticing what you already possess rather than what you lack, and you have the core scientific recipe for well-being.
Okay, but let me stop you there, because I know someone listening to this right now is thinking, well, that's lovely, but gratitude doesn't pay my rent.
Fair point.
I still have to buy groceries, fix my car, commute to a job. The sources don't pretend money is irrelevant. So how do income and careers actually factor into this equation without just putting us back on that treadmill?
Money matters immensely, but the relationship is highly nonlinear. Money essentially buys happiness by removing severe chronic stress. If you are struggling to keep the lights on, going from broke to financially stable provides a massive, measurable happiness boost. It covers your basic needs and gives you a psychological safety net.
Right. But once you hit a comfortable cushion, though, you hit extreme diminishing returns. The leap from struggling to comfortable is life-changing. But the leap from comfortable to extremely wealthy, it barely moves the needle on daily life satisfaction. The $10th million doesn't really change your Tuesday morning.
No, it doesn't. And the data also clearly shows how you spend that money matters a lot. Spending disposable income on experiences creates far more lasting happiness than buying physical things.
Oh yeah, because experiences become part of your identity. You don't aggressively compare your memories of a camping trip with your friends to someone else's camping trip.
Right.
But if you buy a new car, you instantly compare it to the slightly nicer car your neighbor just bought. Plus, you usually share experiences with other people, which feeds right back into that Harvard study on relationships.
Exactly. And when it comes to how we spend our time at work to earn that money, the psychology points to two concepts: flow and mastery. Flow is that psychological sweet spot where you are so completely absorbed in a task that time just vanishes.
You just lose yourself in it.
Yeah, it's the perfect cognitive balance between being bored because a task is too easy and being anxious because it's too difficult.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, because chasing flow at work feels like a very privileged mindset. It's easy to talk about finding flow if you're a graphic designer or a software engineer or a novelist. But what if you are standing groceries for 8 hours or pulling items in a massive fulfillment center?
That is a very common critique, and it's a fair question, but it stems from a misunderstanding of what flow actually is. Flow has nothing to do with the prestige, glamour, or creative nature of the job.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it is entirely about the psychological engagement with the immediate task. People find profound flow in highly repetitive jobs by gamifying the process. They try to beat their own efficiency records, they focus on mastering a very specific physical rhythm, or they find micro interactions to optimize.
Oh, that makes sense, like trying to scan items faster than yesterday.
Exactly. Flow is about how your brain connects to a challenge, not the title on your LinkedIn profile. And that ties right into mastery, the deep human need to avoid stagnation. We simply have to feel like we are growing and getting better at something to feel fulfilled.
We basically want to avoid feeling trapped, but, notice how we are talking about this. Personal mastery, finding individual flow, personal growth. It is a highly Western lens, the individual aggressively pursuing their own best life. The sources actually point out that happiness looks completely different depending on your cultural backdrop.
It really does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, culture literally shapes the physiological sensations we label as happy. In Western, highly individualist cultures, happiness is heavily associated with high arousal positive emotions.
Right, like excitement.
Yeah, we value dopamine-driven states, excitement, passion, standing out from the crowd, crushing personal goals.
But in many East Asian collectivist cultures, the focus shifts to low arousal positive emotions, calmness, peacefulness, harmony within the family and the wider community.
Exactly.
Personal happiness is frequently viewed as less important than the overall well-being of the group. You can genuinely feel a deep sense of contentment simply because your community is functioning smoothly, even if your specific personal ambitions aren't perfectly met.
And we see another fascinating model in Scandinavia. Countries like Denmark and Finland consistently top global happiness rankings. Their secret isn't just that they have a positive mindset, their happiness is largely structural.
Meaning the government.
Yeah. They have immense social trust. They genuinely trust their neighbors, the police, and their institutions. And more importantly, they have robust social safety nets that remove the primal uncertainty of life. You don't have this background hum of anxiety about going bankrupt from a sudden medical emergency.
Right. They also practice hygge, which is that Danish concept of simple, cozy, non-extravagant togetherness. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Is hygge actually practical? Or is it just a trendy aesthetic to sell expensive blankets?
Right. The candles in the blanket.
Exactly. Because if I'm a stressed working parent with 2 kids in a noisy, cramped city apartment, lighting a vanilla candle and drinking tea isn't going to magically fix my life.
No, lighting a candle won't fix structural burnout. You're totally right. The mistake we make in the West is treating hygge like interior design. Hygge is actually a psychological intention. It's the active decision to drop all pretenses, stop striving for a few hours, and just be fully present with people you care about, regardless of the environment. It works in Denmark precisely because that structural safety net we just mentioned removes the existential dread, allowing them the mental bandwidth to actually relax into that cozy state.
That is so interesting. And Bhutan took this collective idea even further in the 1970s. They completely stopped optimizing their country for gross domestic product GDP and instituted gross national happiness.
That's right.
They build their government policies around mental well-being, environmental protection, and cultural preservation, rather than just maximizing economic output.
Which raises a really important question. If a country shouldn't measure its success purely by economic output and constant growth, maybe making happiness our ultimate individual goal is actually a psychological trap.
I read about this truck all the time. People wake up obsessing over, how do I make myself happy today? They analyze every interaction to see if it brought them joy, and they end up completely miserable.
Psychologists call that the paradox of hedonism. The more directly you chase happiness, the more it slips through your fingers. It is a byproduct of living a meaningful life, not a target you can aim at directly. When you make it a target, it inevitably leads to toxic positivity.
Which is that dangerous internet culture demanding you suppress any negative emotions and just focus on the good vibes all the time. But the sources are so clear that psychological health requires a full emotional range.
Absolutely.
You are supposed to feel grief when you lose something. You are supposed to feel frustration when you are blocked. Suppressing those emotions doesn't erase them, it just pushes them into your subconscious where they manifest as chronic anxiety.
And ancient philosophers understood this long before modern psychology. The Stoics built an entire framework around the idea that you cannot control external reality. You can only control your internal reactions. Trying to force the world to make you happy is just a recipe for despair.
Great.
Similarly, Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from our attachment to permanence, clinging to good feelings and expecting them to never fade.
And Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist who survived the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust, developed logotherapy based on a very similar observation. He argued that the primary human drive is not pleasure at all. It is meaning.
Yes.
Hardship, friction, and discomfort are guaranteed in life. But finding meaning within that hardship is how we survive.
Frankl's work really lays the foundation for what we now call post-traumatic growth. We often think of trauma as something that only breaks us. But the mechanism of post-traumatic growth occurs when a severe hardship shatters your existing worldview.
And then you have to rebuild it.
Exactly. The struggle to rebuild that worldview forces you to forge new, incredibly resilient neural pathways. You develop a deeper appreciation for life and stronger relationships precisely because you had to extract meaning from the suffering.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Think about the hardest things we choose to do. Raising children, starting a business from scratch, caring for a sick relative.
Oh, yeah.
The day-to-day reality of those things involves immense stress, sleep deprivation, and just sheer exhaustion. Pure pleasure is almost entirely absent on a random Tuesday when your toddler is screaming or your business account is overdrawn.
Definitely.
Yet we do these things voluntarily and we look back on them as the proudest achievements of our lives. We do them for meaning. It proves that a life of pure, frictionless pleasure is an incredibly shallow goal.
We need the friction to create the meaning. And what's also compelling is how our capacity to process that friction changes as we age. The data reveals a very clear happiness U-curve.
Yeah, I found this fascinating because you would naturally assume that happiness just slowly declines as we get older and our bodies break down, but it's U-shaped, it's relatively high in our 20s, and then it steadily drops, bottoming out right around our late 40s and early 50s.
Yep, the classic midlife crisis era.
Exactly. And the sources attribute this dip to a massive, heavy stack of simultaneous responsibilities. You have career pressure peaking, you're raising teenagers, and you're often caring for aging parents all at the exact same time.
But then, remarkably, the curve swings back up. Happiness steadily rises through our 60s, 70s, and 80s. The psychological mechanism behind this is called socio-emotional selectivity theory.
Say that again?
Socio-emotional selectivity theory. As we age, we become acutely aware of our shrinking time horizon. Because our brain knows time is running out, the amygdala actually becomes less responsive to negative, petty stimuli. We literally stop sweating the small stuff, we ruthlessly curate our social circles to prioritize deep relationships, and we develop profound emotional regulation.
We basically just get better at filtering the noise. But we also have to look at how we interact with the wider world outside our tight inner circle. The research on weak ties is fascinating.
Oh, I love the weak ties research.
Weak ties are those brief, casual interactions, chatting with the barista who makes your coffee, waving to the neighbor walking their dog. The data shows these tiny, low-stakes interactions noticeably boost our daily mood.
Because we are fundamentally social creatures, and those weak ties constantly signal to our nervous system that we are safe and woven into a community. But contrast that biological need with how we interact on the modern internet. The curated highlight reel of social media is the toxic opposite of a healthy weak tie.
It really is. Passive scrolling absolutely destroys life satisfaction. You are taking your completely normal, chaotic, messy Tuesday morning and comparing it to someone else's carefully edited, color-corrected vacation photo.
It's just not real.
No, it's a biologically unfair comparison that puts your brain in a constant state of perceived lack.
And the exhaustion of that constant digital comparison doesn't just stay in your head, it floods your entire nervous system. We can't talk about the psychology of well-being without addressing the physical hardware our consciousness runs on. The mind and body share the exact same operating system, creating a massive bi-directional mind-body loop.
The mind stresses out the body, but the state of the body absolutely dictates the state of the mind. I was reading the section on gut health and this whole emerging field of nutritional psychiatry.
Yeah, the mechanism there is the gut-brain axis, which is largely connected by the vagus nerve. The vast majority of the serotonin in your body, which is the key neurotransmitter responsible for regulating mood, sleep, and digestion, is actually produced by the microbiome in your gut, not in your brain.
Wait, really? Not in the brain?
Right, mostly in the gut. So when your gut health is compromised by a terrible diet, it physically halts the production of the very chemicals you need to feel emotionally stable.
So what you eat is literally constructing the biological building blocks of your mood. And it's not just what you put inside your body, it's the environment you put your body inside. When I walk in a dense forest, I instantly feel my shoulders drop.
That phenomenon is called biophilia. Humans have a deeply ingrained evolutionary affinity for the natural world. Attention restoration theory shows that urban environments demand constant, exhausting, directed attention. Dodging cars, reading signs.
It's exhausting.
It is. But nature requires only soft fascination. Simply taking a 20-minute walk on a tree-lined street drastically lowers your circulating stress hormones because your brain's threat detection system finally gets to power down.
And your immediate indoor environment matters just as much too. The studies on minimalism show that physical clutter in your home isn't just an eyesore, it literally spikes your cortisol levels. And the sources note this is especially true for women.
Yeah, that gender difference comes down to societal conditioning and the disproportionate share of the mental load women often carry. When a woman's brain scans a cluttered room, it frequently doesn't process neutral objects. It processes an endless, unfinished to-do list.
Right, like I need to fold that, I need to put that away.
Exactly. That visual noise acts as a continuous low-grade threat response, completely draining cognitive energy.
So, what does this all mean? We know the philosophy, we understand the U-curve, we know we need strong relationships, boundaries with our phones, and, a clean kitchen. But how do we actually start changing our habits without getting totally overwhelmed? Because knowing the science is useless if you don't do anything with it.
The biggest hurdle is what psychologists call the intention-behavior gap. We have every intention of changing, but our own perfectionism paralyzes us. The mechanism to beat this is to start absurdly small. You want to exercise. Do not try to run 5 miles a day. Start with exactly 5 minutes of walking.
Just 5 minutes.
Yep. You want to practice gratitude. Don't write a 3-page journal entry. Write down exactly 1 sentence.
You essentially make the barrier to entry so low you physically cannot fail. And when you inevitably do miss a day, it doesn't mean the habit is ruined. The sources highlight Kristen Neff's groundbreaking work on self-compassion here.
Her work is so important.
We have this twisted idea that being kind to ourselves makes us lazy, but the opposite is true. Beating yourself up triggers a stress response that makes you want to quit. True self-compassion creates a safe internal environment. It allows you to take risks, fail, and immediately try again without spiraling into shame.
It's the ultimate foundational skill. If we synthesize everything we've explored today, the overarching truth is that happiness is not a prize to be won. It's not a destination waiting for you at the end of a checklist. It is a quiet, daily practice. It is woven through small, intentional moments, the buffering power of deep relationships, and the conscious embrace of meaning over pure, unadulterated pleasure.
And honestly, just by taking the time to listen to this deep dive, you are actively investing in your own autonomy. You are taking control of your mind, expanding your perspective, and doing the quiet, unglamorous work of growing.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with one final, slightly mind-bending concept to chew on. We talked earlier about the hedonic treadmill, how our brains are biologically wired to keep us slightly dissatisfied, so we keep striving and surviving.
Right.
Think about what that actually implies for your daily life. If that treadmill is a brutal evolutionary mechanism designed purely to keep our ancient ancestors anxious and hunting, then achieving a state of true lasting contentment isn't just a personal victory. It is literally an act of evolutionary rebellion.
Oh, I love that. Choosing to be content with what you have right now is hacking your own biology. It is a rebellion against your own ancestral wiring. So, your call to action this week? Rebel against evolution. Pick one small, absurdly easy habit to start, maybe a 5-minute walk, maybe 1 sentence of gratitude, maybe just chatting with a barista. Stop waiting for the ultimate achievement to hand you a clean, perfect picture of happiness, and start finding meaning in the murky, messy reality of right now. Tune in next time for our next deep dive, and remember to ask yourself every once in a while, are you actually happy right now?